Happy Sunday, my beautiful people. Hope you guys are enjoying your Sunday morning. Welcome to the Short Stays Big Dream podcast, where we explore everything related to short-term rentals, travel, and the business of travel. So today, let me begin by giving you the agenda for today, or some of the topics we're going to be talking about. But before I do that, guys, remember, if you have a question as we're going along, or if you want to ask me something to address, then just put it in the comments, and then I can do that. And again, those that are watching, thank you for being here. Let me go over the agenda real quick. It's been a crazy few days for me. I'll tell you a quick story. It's been freaking insane. As you can tell, I'm not at home. I'm traveling again. Here's how my travel week or weekend started. Friday when I left, I lost my wallet. I get to the airport. My mind is not where it needs to be. So I get to the airport and I'm trying to cancel credit cards. Luckily, I had my passport with me. I'm trying to get those things situated, and I look at the screen to see where my flight is. I see Bogota, and I go to that gate. But I forgot, or my mind was on autopilot. So because I wasn't going to Bogota, I was going to Cali. I'm in the gate. I'm like, man, it's delayed, right? Because I thought I was supposed to leave at a certain hour. But I'm like, no problems. I'm used to delays. Go to the gate, try to get in. The lady, the biometric puts that X. The lady goes, hey, can I see your boarding pass? Showed her my boarding pass, and she goes, where are you trying to go to? And I said, Bogota. She goes, well, your flight's for Cali. Anyways, and there's a lot more that happened between then and now. But that is life, people. Not all sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes shit happens. And I had some crazy shit happen the last couple of days. Anyway, we're here. Here's what's on the agenda. I'm going to give you an update on New York's ban on short-term rental. As I mentioned last week, Brian Chesky was in New York, had a meeting with some New York officials to discuss, the data that came out as a result of that ban. As I've mentioned before, if you missed it, there's a lot of cities, a lot of people, a lot of entities are blaming the short-term rental industry on a couple of things. One of the things they're blaming the short-term rental industry is on the housing shortage. And when they started spewing that false narrative, because I firmly, I'm in the real estate industry, people. I know why we have a housing shortage. But when they started spewing that, I always asked everyone that said that to show me the evidence, show me why, or show me what leads you to believe that short-term rentals are the cause of the housing shortage, and no one can provide it. Well, guess what happened in New York City? New York City used that reasoning to ban short-term rentals. And when I say ban, keep in mind, they can't ban it, but they made the restrictions so strict that it wasn't feasible anymore to operate as a short-term rental operator. So they banned it. Well, now, here's what happened. We fast forward to now. Now we have data, right? Airbnb now has the data to show that not only did it not affect, not only did the ban not help the housing crunch in New York City, it made it worse, because if you look at the data, rents increased more than they were increasing before the ban, and we still have the same limited number of available rentals in New York City than we did before the ban. So it's BS. Anyways, fast forward. Brian Chesky had that meeting with them. Now, the update is the following. that as a result of that data and as a result of that meeting, they're reconsidering and readdressing this ban. Now they're just trying to work out what type of regulation they're going to have surrounding short-term rentals. Now, we're going to touch on a couple of other bans, but in addition to that, we're going to talk about the industry, the health industry of travel. We're going to talk about the dominance of OTAs. This is an interesting story. Going into the future, like for ahead of 2025, going into 2026 and beyond, OTAs have continued to have a huge dominance in terms of travel and how people book travel. And now with the invent of personalized travel, right? The invent of AI. One second. Sorry about that. For some reason, my hotel room, the alarm was off on the radio. But anyways, so we're going to talk about that. And then I'm going to touch in a couple of other interesting stories related to travel. But let me see which is going to be the first one I'm going to talk about. Oh, let's talk the first one that I want to talk about, because it's going to go into effect effect January 1st. And that is the following. It's about Mexico, particularly the Caribbean side of Mexico, but it's also going to affect some of the ports in the Pacific side, right? So Mexico City is going to start imposing additional tourist tax. If you've been to Mexico lately, particularly Cancun, Playa del Carmen, Tulum, you probably noticed it's super expensive now, right? It post-pandemic, that area became a hotspot, and as a result of it being a super popular spot, everything became super expensive. And they began, or Mexico began adding tourist tax to a lot of things. But now they want to add an additional $47 per passenger for everyone coming into one of their ports. So prior to this tax, if you were coming in from a cruise ship, you didn't have to pay the tourist tax because they considered you transit, meaning you weren't really staying in Mexico. Now that's going to change. January 1st, they're going to impose a $42 tax on all tourists visiting Mexico, either by plane or by boat. Doesn't matter anymore. You're going to have to pay that tax. Now, the big question is, how is that going to be absorbed? Now, because this is so new, this just came out, and because it's going to take effect January 1st, the implementation of this on the travel side is still unknown. Reading some of the tea leaves that I'm reading for some of the comments that some of the cruise CEOs are saying, it looks like they're going to simply just add that to the cost of your cruise. I don't think they have enough time to implement a system to start charging you as you get to Mexico, or as a separate charge. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's more likely the cruise ships are going to just simply increase their fare by that $42, whatever they're going to increase it for, and then they're going to pay it for you before you get there. Now, there is a rumor that some of the cruise lines are going to boycott or limit the amount of cruises, at least for the first 4 months going into 2025, as a protest to this fee, but that's still up in the air. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is going back to regulations and some of the bans related to short-term rentals. Now, 2025 is going to be a big year in Europe, but more specifically, it's a big year in Italy. Now, we already know that Rome and some cities within Italy, there are some, or they implemented many restrictions, and nothing severe, nothing that really affected the short-term rental industry as much. But this current regulation that they're putting into place, I firmly believe will affect it. And I'm going to tell you why. So here's what Rome wants to do. As I mentioned, 2025 is a big year. It's a big year for religious travel, because in 2025, and the Jubilee is going to happen in Rome. And also, they have the Winter Olympics in Italy coming into or in 2025. The Winter Olympics are going to be there. So they're calling it a security measure. As a security measure, they are banning self check-ins. So if you're one of those people, or you travel and you get there late, or get one of those cheap flights where you're getting into town, 10, 11, 12, midnight, and then expecting to go get checked in, that's going to be very difficult starting in the next month, because this ban takes effect next month. They no longer allow lock boxes. And if they're going to check you, if you're going to check into short-term rental, the host has to check you in. And they're calling it a security measure to combat potential terrorism, because they want to confirm. First of all, let me backtrack. Italy already has a regulation in which all guests, regardless of how long you're staying there, all foreigners or guests, not just say foreigners, but anyone staying in a hotel or short-term rental has to register with the local police. So the way it's worked in the past, if you've done that, is, you go in, you provide your passport, you provide, all the guests need to provide a government issued ID, their contact number, and that information was forwarded to the police station. That's how it was done in the past. So you could have uploaded your information to your host or to the hotel, and then they forward that to the police. Now, the host has to verify the information you're giving them. So you still have to upload your documents, but the host has to look at you and say, you're the person, now you can check it. So, and that, my friends, I think will definitely affect the industry, because it's almost impossible to now manage large portfolios and have people checking you in, because it becomes cost effective or ineffective, right? It's not going to be cost effective to do that anymore. The reason we have lock boxes is because we can't be in all places at all times. So if you have a busy weekend and you're managing several hundred properties, there's no way you can check everyone in. So we'll see how that plays out going into it. In addition, going back, Barcelona still hasn't made a final decision as to what regulations they're going to put in place, with the exception of they're not renewing any short-term rental licenses. So if you're planning on having a short-term rental, they're not renewing that. They're not issuing new licenses or renewing old licenses. It's going to affect, according to them, about 10,000 short-term rentals in that area. I mean, that's a lot, and that is a disruptor, people. So, but they still haven't. Nothing's been finalized yet, and it's still not supposed to take into effect until way until like the end of 2025, beginning of 2026. So we don't know how that's going to play out. All right. Again, guys, if you have any questions relating to what I'm talking about, just list them in the comments, and then I'll try to address them as we're going. All right. Next thing I want to talk about, and here's and it's about the future of OTAs, of online travel agencies, right? So if you don't, when you hear me say OTA or anyone in the travel industry, that's what we're referring to: online travel agencies. What's an online travel agency? Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia, TripAdvisor. These are all OTAs. Now, it's projected that going into the next 4 to 5 years, OTAs will dominate by a lot how people book travel. More importantly, and I addressed this, I don't remember, it was last STR News podcast or the one prior to that. This is one of the reasons why Airbnb is creating what they're defining as personalized travel. So what does that mean? Here's what that means. Going forward, they're using AI to, when you go on a platform, just like you do now, like for example, we're going to use Amazon. When you go on Amazon to purchase something, or when you go on Amazon, period, Amazon already knows who you are. They know what your preferences are, and they give you suggestions of things, what things to buy. Well, in the OTA world, you're going to start to see that. When you log into their platform, they're already going to have the data to recognize what type of traveler you are. Are you a business traveler? Are you a leisure traveler? Are you an adventure traveler? Whatever type of travel you have, they're going to have that, and they're going to personalize and make suggestions for you in terms of this travel. This is what I see as the future of OTAs, and where I see that there's going to be some issues for companies like mine as it relates to booking on OTAs, because no longer can someone go on there and see what's available, and no longer it's going to be more difficult to show up on that first page. So that is where I see the future of travel in 2025. It's going to be more personalized. Those people that cry that they don't have what's the word I'm looking for? Privacy. Privacy and their data. They don't like to share their data. Guess what, people, man? Everything's going to be available to all these companies. You have no privacy anymore. If you have a smartphone, unfortunately, you're very limited. Your data is going to be out there, and these companies are going to know exactly how to market to you, and they're going to show you stuff that they believe you want to either purchase or experience. And that can be a little scary. For businesses, it's going to be great. For individuals, just like I said, just watch out on that. Okay. The last thing I'm going to talk about in terms of news is going to be the Global Travel Health Index. If you guys are not aware, there is an index for travel to see how healthy the travel industry is. In October of 2024, the index was 110, which means that 10% that from 2023, October 2023 to October 2024, it included that we saw a 10% growth in the travel industry in general. But the biggest growth happened in car rentals and aviation. So, for example, in aviation, we saw a 27th increase in travel, and in car rentals, we saw a 19% increase. Now, keep in mind that increase is a little artificial because of the pandemic, right? Especially the car rentals. The pandemic really hurt the car rental industry. I mean, it really devastated them. And it's been taking them a bit to catch up to what it was before. Hold on, this alarm is going off again. So when you're looking at this number, I'm not 100% sure at what, what they're using 2023 and into 2024, but I still think, and specifically in the car rental industry, I still think they haven't reached the numbers that they had pre-pandemic. So I know the airlines have, but overall, the car rental industry has not. All right, that takes care of that. Just go on here real quick to see what else I want to talk about before I get into. Oh, same thing on the as it relates to travel. Oh, I just remember there's a couple of things I wanna address here real quick. Let me just make a note before I forget. Okay, as I talked about in last week's news and digest, right? Holiday travel is, and this year's holiday travel, we're seeing record numbers all over the place. So give yourself some extra time when you're going to travel, specifically if you're going to travel international. I'm going to give you a couple of things that's happening internationally right now. Colombia, for example, which is where I'm at, Colombia is they're having a work stoppage, not a strike per se, but a slowdown for immigration personnel. Right now, apparently, they're having some national budget issues. People are not getting paid on time. People aren't getting raises, and as a result of that, there's been a slowdown in terms of immigration. So, to give you an example, to get in for me to get through immigration, normally, even if it's super busy, you're going to get out within an hour. It took me 4.5 hours to leave immigration when I came in on Friday. It's all, it's all because of that stoppage. But we're seeing that also in Europe. Now, when you add the fact that we're having record-breaking travel and you're having less people working, there's going to be issues. And you're seeing issues all over the place with flight delays. Like I said, it's taking longer to get out of immigration, and taking longer to check in to your flights. So give yourself plenty of time. Now, something very important about international travel as well as it relates to your passport. This is a mistake that I see a lot of people make, and they miss their flight or can't make their trip because they don't know the rules. So one of the biggest rules that people don't understand is that don't look at your expiration date on your passport, because in reality, it is 6 months prior to your expiration date. So if your passport says it expires January 1st, or let's use July, it expires July 1st of 2025, you can't travel starting January. Most countries will not let you in if you have 6 months or less left on your passport. In addition, you need at least 4 sheets on your passport. So if you travel a lot like I do, this happened to me in 2018 in Guatemala. I got into Guatemala. I only had 4 sheets left. No, I take it back. 3 sheets left on my passport, and they told me I could not leave because I needed to go renew my passport or get a new, or add more sheets. Not renew, add more sheets to my passport. Luckily, I had a connection at the embassy, so I went to the embassy. They were able to insert extra sheets into my passport, and I didn't have an issue. But if I didn't have that connection, I would have been stuck in Guatemala for a little bit, because it's not super easy and not super fast to get more sheets in your passport. And worse yet, if your passport has less than 6 months to expire, you have to send your passport in to get a new one. So pay attention to that. That's a big one. All right, next. Okay, going back to the dominance of OTAs, right? This is why I am preaching and I'm telling everyone to do 2 things if you're a short-term rental operator, and that is to focus heavily on direct bookings, create a email marketing list of your client base so that you can market directly to them, and make sure that you have a robust marketing plan, because OTAs are going to dominate. OTAs, the more OTAs dominate, the more money they're going to make and the less money you're going to make. So if you don't want to be paying out a lot of fees to these OTAs, and if you're to compete with the bigger companies, it's going to be difficult for these mom and pop operators. This is why I say that if you are a mom and pop operator, in the next couple of years, you're going to have to, if you want to keep that short-term rental, you're going to have to give it up to a professional property management company, because they're getting all the perks, they're getting all the benefits of what's happening in the industry. Going back to Paris, I mentioned Paris is the 2nd largest short-term rental market in the world. They're putting restrictions, but they're putting restrictions on mom and pop operators, not necessarily the big companies. And the big companies can afford to pay the extra fees that most mom and pop operators can't. So again, if you want to stay in this game, you have to pivot, people. You have to adjust because things are changing, and they're changing super, super fast. Boom, 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 boom. And then the last thing I'll talk about in terms of news is, and I've mentioned this before, is we're seeing more and more specific and specialized travel. I'm going to give you an example of what I'm referring to. Wellness travel is booming, people. One of the reasons why in my vineyard in Georgia, I am creating stuff for active people, like the mountain bike trail, the ATV trails, the horseback riding trails. We're creating an archery range, a axe throwing range. We're creating all these amenities because in travel today, people have a lot of options. The travel industry is growing faster than most people can keep up. But as a result of that, you have to stand out. And as a result of that, I highly recommend that you start to specialize. So as a company, I'm going to give you what we're doing as a company now. And then we'll go into what our projects are, and we'll go into our what we did last week, right? But if you are a short-term rental operator and you have to stand out. So if you own, let's say, a residential home, a 3-2, 2-bath house that we have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands available in the market, you're going to struggle. And we're seeing that with some of our property owners that have these average properties. Those properties are struggling today, and they're making a lot less money than they were making several years ago. So we're seeing that those people that got into the short-term rental industry at the peak, 2021, 2022, they're not going to be here after probably 2025 unless they make adjustments, unless they pivot, right? So, like, for example, with some of the owners that I have, I have a lot of owners that had average homes, never wanted to invest in these homes, to upgrade them, to bring them into today's standard, and as a result, they're making a lot less money, and they call me crying, oh, it's not making the money that I was making before. Yeah, because you're not listening to me, right? You haven't listened to 90% that I've been sending you, and I'm telling you, you need to pivot. You need to do certain things so that you can be competitive, right? But us as a company, this is why we're not buying residential homes right now to turn them into short-term rentals. That's not our play anymore. Our play now is to be more specialized. In for us right now in specific, we're specializing in couples retreats, right? We want to brand ourselves going into the future as the go-to place for couples. If you want to go to my Georgia property, if you want to go to my friend's Doug's property in Gunter, Alabama, if you want to go to Garrett Brown's glamping area in Houston, those are the type of the locations that we're investing our time and effort in, because that's where I think the future is going to be. In addition to that, we're also investing and getting involved in multi-unit buildings, and we're converting those buildings into short-term rentals, because even though we're in short-term rentals, basically what we're doing is turning them into hotels, right? Because as I mentioned, and if you didn't watch last week's STR news, the hotel industry has rebounded and surpassed post-pandemic numbers. That's where everything's going to. It's easier in terms of regulations, because again, all these regulations that these cities are doing, these government officials who don't know what the heck they're doing, because again, going back to, we're going to ban or restrict Airbnb because there's a housing crisis. People, that has nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing to do with it. And the data tells us it doesn't. But these politicians, who don't know crap, especially crap about business, are creating these regulations that are not helping. In fact, they're hurting. So to avoid that, And to stay viable going into the future, we have to pivot. You have to pivot. And one of the things we're pivoting to is that doing more hotel, resort, glamping style projects instead of what we were doing in the past. Now, let's go into this week's. Let's go into this week's numbers. Let me share my screen. All right, it was a definitely. Oh, 1 second. Okay. As you can see by the numbers from last week, as I mentioned before, we're going into what I refer to as our winter peak season. Our revenue is at 42.59, which is a 46% increase from the week prior. We have 264 nights booked, a 15% increase. We're at 70.37 occupancy rate, which is a 14% increase. We're at a 161 RevPAR. I'm sorry. Average daily rate, our ADR is at 161, which is a 26% increase, and RevPAR is at 114. Now, in terms of occupancy, and I'm gonna promote this upcoming podcast. So I had a phenomenal conversation with someone that I call an expert, and if you follow this show, you know I think very few people in this industry are experts, especially people that only manage 4 or 5 properties. They're in one region and they want to call themselves experts. They're not, right? There's very few. But one of those people that I call experts, specifically in the glamping world, we had a conversation with him. This podcast will air on Thursday. Highly recommend you watch the podcast. So we had the conversation of occupancy rate, right? Everyone has a number that they want. Everyone in the industry agrees that 100% occupancy is not what we want, right? Because if you're at 100% occupancy rate, that means you are undervalued. In addition, on the flip side, everyone agrees we don't want to be probably at less than 50% occupancy rate, because then we're missing out in revenue. That means we're either overpriced or we're not in the right market, or we need to pivot and make some adjustments, right? I use the occupancy rate as a metric to help me strategize for the upcoming weeks, months, year, right? I like to be between, my magic number really is between 75 and 85% occupancy rate. I'm okay being at 70, not okay being below 70, and not okay being above 90, right? So that's the sweet spot. Now, that's mine. My guest, his numbers are different. He likes to be at 80 and 80, above 85% occupancy rate. And for him, anything below that is not good, and he needs to do the same and adjust, right? So we're all a little different, but using your numbers, and I've said this before, really important to know your numbers. I don't care what business you're in, you really need to know your numbers, because if you don't know your numbers, you have no idea where your business is going. None. So it's important, that's important to understand. Now, let's go into the platforms. Airbnb is dominating. It made 22,000. Booking is at 7.4. We're at 5.7. Verbal 5.5, and all others at 1.7. In terms of RevPAR, Hollywood is at 257. Miami's at 328. Others at 103. Big House, which is in Fort Lauderdale, is 206. And then we have Pompano at 212. Let me stop sharing my screen now. Okay, so those are the numbers. We're going into our winter peak season. I expect these numbers to go way up. So, for example, our book lead time is starting to extend a little bit, but it's still way short, right? Our book lead time is less than 14 days. So when I look at December, I'm not really worried about December until I get to the third week of November. Then I really start looking at it. But right now, December is way up than it was back in 2023. And it was in terms of revenue, we've already surpassed all of November. And November was a good month. So December is going to be a crazy month for us. Probably it's going to be a crazy month for you. Because as I mentioned, the travel season for the holiday travel season is seeing record numbers across the board. So be prepared. The reason I'm mentioning that is because you as an operator, you need to be prepared for the rush, right? And make sure that your pricing strategy coincides with what's happening in the industry. Now, in terms of project progress, I'm here in Colombia. We're working on a couple of things here. We're optimizing. We got hired to optimize some short-term rentals. We're taking on a small boutique hotel here in Cali, Colombia. And it's a great time to be here. It's the holiday season. Colombians do the Christmas like no other. Last night, I went to La Plaza Bolivar, and it was last night. If you guys don't know some of the traditions in Colombia, was El Día de las Velitas, which is really, it's just a day in which signifies the lighting in the beginning of Christmas, right? So they light candles, specifically 3. If I remember, the colors is a blue, a red, and a white candle. They light them, and then all the Christmas lights light up, and specifically in each plaza, right? I was here in Colombia, saw that happen. I'm going to post some of that stuff. If you don't follow me on Instagram, I do recommend you do, because I posted some of this in my stories. But it's beautiful, people. And as I mentioned before, I'm going to make a final push for you guys. If you guys never traveled internationally for Christmas, man, I highly recommend you do that. I started doing that back in, I think it's been 6 years now. And then obviously the pandemic slowed me down a little bit. But I started traveling a lot internationally during the holidays. Portugal does, especially Lisbon. They light up that place really, really nice. Madrid is another example I've been to during the holidays. Beautiful. Amsterdam in the Netherlands, they also do it really nice. They light up all these canals. Really cool. Highly recommend you do that. You know, if you don't want to go too far, then come to South America, specifically Colombia. As I mentioned, cities like Bogota, Medellin, and Cali. Man, the light, the how they decorate, all the light stuff they put, all the festivals that they have, man, you will love it. It is a nice experience. You know, I personally love it, hence why I push it and I promote it. So I highly recommend you do that. That is going to be it for today. Let me just make sure we don't have any comments that I haven't answered yet. But anyways, my beautiful people, please, 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 this upcoming Thursday, we're going to be airing the podcast that I just mentioned with my special guest. I don't want to give his name out, but some of you probably already guessed, because he is well known in the glamping industry. He is part of the Bigger Pockets staff. The conversation was definitely informative, entertaining, and I highly recommend you watch it. But I love you guys. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Follow me on Instagram. Buy me a coffee if you want to have a conversation. See you next week.